10 years ago, thousands of miles above the Earth, a lonely god finally rested,
I don't want to go.
signaling the end to the first era of the revival of Britain's longest-running science fiction series. Doctor Who started back in 1963, detailing the time-travelling adventures of a humanoid alien and his Terran companions as they fought off the nasties of the universe. This is the closest I could get to Nine's costume. I don't own a leather jacket. I'm not cool enough for that. Over the course of 26 amazing and varying series, the Doctor visited distant worlds, befriended the best of humanity, and saved the universe from some of the most terrifying creatures ever to tread the cosmos. From the devastating Daleks and the cruel Cybermen, to the manipulative Master and the scheming Sontarans. And let's not forget the greatest of all the Doctor's villains, having to work on a BBC budget. In 1989, the Seventh Doctor and Ace walked off to have more adventures away from the eyes of the public, with the series now cancelled. Jump forward to 2005, and after numerous attempts, Russell T Davies was given the task of resurrecting the titular Time Lord for the 21st century. And considering that A, we've already covered the spin-offs, and B, the fact there are spin-offs to begin with, it's safe to say he did a very good job. Between 2005 and 2010, Russell not only enchanted a whole new generation of Whovians with his storytelling, but, in my opinion, created some of the best television in British history, even expanding the universe in ways that hadn't really been done before, and hasn't been matched since. I'm not ashamed to say I hold his era of the show in very high regard, and it's rightly earned. So after a very long wait, thank you for your patience, I finally feel ready to bring you guys my favourite episodes from my favourite showrunner on Doctor Who. Before we start, I want to make a statement and lay some ground rules. But if you don't care for that, then the time code for when the top 10 list actually starts is on screen now. I mean, I'd like it if you stuck around to hear why I've done what I've done, but I'm not the boss of you. You do you, friend. You do you. Originally, this video was solely a David Tennant era top 10 list, since, well, he is my Doctor, and I did get very far with filming that video. But when I sat down to edit it, quite frankly, I wasn't happy with it. I thought it was a terrible video, and considering how popular both Torchwood and the Sarah Jane videos have been, well, needless to say, I felt like this one had to be just as good, if not better, than both of those combined. And it just wasn't. Hence why I've taken a whole extra year to try and get my thoughts straight, as well as include Christopher Eccleston's series, which, if you ask me, is actually the singular greatest series of Doctor Who, period. And that's coming from a Tennant fan. I also have to say, it's been damn hard trying to whittle down this era to just 10 episodes that I want to talk about. Frankly, I could do what I'm doing with the Higurashi retrospective and make hour-long videos just talking about each series if I wanted. But you guys have seen what my turnaround time for videos are like. This took 2 years! So in making this new list, I've actually limited myself with some very loose rules. Number 1, only one regeneration episode, that being the last story for one of our 2 Doctors. Number 2, only one season final per Doctor unless it conflicts with the first rule. Number 3, only one 2-parter per series unless it conflicts with the first 2 rules. This is turning into Isaac Asimov's robot thing. Well, apart from this one. Number 4, choose from the heart, not from the head. This was the most recent rule and actually helped finalize this list. I can almost guarantee that most of the episodes I like won't feature on anyone else's lists, particularly my number one. I should also probably say that if you haven't seen my previous videos, where I cover both my favourite episodes on Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures, then you'd probably want to check those out too. With all that out of the way, welcome my friends to my top 10 favourite episodes of the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who.
I'm the Doctor, by the way. What's your name? Rose. Nice to meet you, Rose. Run for your life!
It's completely terrifying, but it's so exciting. He said I was brilliant and I could change the world. So many places I've been, there's so much more to see. We got galaxies and planets and moons, and an awful lot of running to do.
Number 10.
And I was having such a nice day.
Boomtown. This is the second time we've started a top 10 list with a Slitheen episode. And I actually kind of regret starting the Sarah Jane one with the Slitheen episode, honestly. I kind of wish it was Dave the Clown, but that mistake's there forever now. Arriving in then present-day Cardiff, the Doctor and friends are surprised to find a Slitheen currently residing as mayor of the Welsh city. The Welsh capital? It is. Cardiff is the capital, isn't it? Is Cardiff the capital of Wales? I hope so. After capturing her and saying that they'll take her back to her home planet, Margaret reveals that if they take her there, she'll be executed. As the TARDIS refuels, the Doctor grants Margaret her last meal. But can he go through with transporting someone to their death? A sequel to the first two-parter of the revival, Aliens in London and World War III, Boomtown is a much quieter, more personal story compared to, well, pretty much most of modern Doctor Who. There isn't a lot of expensive effects, there isn't a new bubbly-eyed monster to tackle, it's a very simple character-driven story. And it works really well. We've gotten to like our characters over the first series, Jack only recently, but it's nice seeing them just hang out for a bit, being themselves. We have the return of Margaret Blaine, or as she's known, Blonfell Floch Plasmavir de Slitheen. I really hope I said that right. I mean, it's not like she's going to kill me or anything. She's like an egg or something now. Or actually, no, she'd be. Oh no, she'd be a child of the Slitheen now. Oh joy! And it's frankly nice to see her doing more things. She didn't get that much screen time in the previous two-parter, but she definitely left an impression to warrant her return. And I'm so glad that they did bring her back, as we get to see a really good range of scenes from her. From her comedic escape from the Doctor, to her scheming over dinner, and eventually her more, well, human side as she seeks forgiveness. In fact, every scene where the two of them are together are just great. Christopher Eccleston and Annette Badland really play off each other fantastically well. I actually find it kind of ironic that we have a quiet episode like this, set in Cardiff, with Captain Jack bouncing about, since this episode kind of reminds me of something out of Torchwood. This is definitely similar in tone to episodes like Out of Time or To the Last Man. Very down to earth, very little effects, just people being people. And it's a welcome change for Doctor Who. I'd actually like to see more stories like this in the main series. They can be a refreshing breather from back-to-back action-focused stories, and a great opportunity to develop your characters. And if I'm completely honest, after Series 11, I really hope the fam get an episode like this. And I really hope they stop calling them fam. What's wrong with companions? I'll admit, I've been flip-flopping on which episode to actually fill this spot, mainly because there are a lot of episodes that warrant a mention. But I have to say, I think Boomtown deserves more recognition than it's gotten, and if this at least gives you the notion to try the episode out again, then that's all I ask for.
The Lord Mayor says thank you for popping by. She'd love to have a chat, but she's up to her eyes in paperwork.
She's climbing out the window, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
Number 9.
I've come to help. I'm the doctor.
Dalek.
Exterminate! Exterminate! Exterminate!
The Doctor and Rose land in the far-off future of 2012, where the Doctor comes face to face with his greatest enemy once again, and the only other living survivor of the last great Time War. Oh yes, the only other living survivor of the Time War. And let's not forget that Gallifrey and the Time Lords didn't actually blow up. Because that was something we really wanted changing. I don't think I need to say too much on this one. Dalek is probably the best Dalek story we've had in the revival. And just to cover my butt for later, I don't simply mean a story that features the Daleks, more so I mean character depth, not just for the Doctor, but, well, you know, for the Dalek itself. I've said Dalek far too many times already. The first scene between the Doctor and the Dalek is simply iconic. As I'm sure I've mentioned before, I missed Series 1 when it aired, so I didn't experience this scene in the same way everyone else did. I actually heard an audio version of this in the Dalek Conquests, a CD detailing all the Dalek episodes from their first appearance back in the Daleks. That's not going to get confusing. Through to their then current appearance. But we'll get to that one. My point being, this scene and the story on a whole was enchanting in audio form, but it's so much cooler seeing the visuals to go along with it. Also, speaking as someone who isn't the biggest fan of the Daleks, though that's mainly due to their overuse over the years, seeing this golden pepper pot completely own this private army is just wonderful. Which is very odd to say. A lot of people died. But hey, they were torturing it, so I guess it's okay? This was also the first time we heard Murray Gold's wonderful Dalek theme, and it's just as powerful today as it was back then. There's so much more that I could say about this story, but we'd be here till the cows come home. Or until the car leads come home. Simply put, this is a great reintroduction to the Doctor's oldest enemies. And I couldn't imagine it happening any other way.
Why don't you just die?
You would make a good Dalek.
Number 8. The Christmas Invasion. The newly regenerated Doctor crash lands in London just in time for Christmas. As he sleeps off his regeneration sickness, the human race is held for ransom at the hands of the Sycorax. Can the human race hang on long enough for the Doctor to recover? Or will Harriet Jones have to take actions into her own hands? I can't tell you how long it's been since I last watched this episode before working on this video, but by God, even though I vaguely remembered what happened, as well as knowing there was 3 whole other series to get through, I was absolutely blown away by how much this episode grabbed me. I kid you not, I was on the edge of my seat watching this. I'll admit, I do really like the modern day stories of the Russell T Davies era, since there's actually a sub-story running through all those stories, but we'll get to that. I'm actually halfway through convincing myself to maybe make a new review series simply covering those stories. But by God I'm not confirming anything. Lord no. Do you like the suit as well? It's the real reason this video's getting made. I've got the glasses as well, actually, so, oh, yes! I don't know if it's just me, but upon rewatching this, I actually found some mild similarities between this and Torchwood Children of Earth. And you all know how much I love Children of Earth! The human race is presented with an alien threat. The Doctor is MIA. Said alien has some kind of control over a chunk of the human race.
Oh my God!
The UK government try to handle it, and promptly fail. And, oddly surprisingly, Torchwood comes in to deal with the buggers. Obviously, that's a very generalised overview, and the minutiae of both stories are vastly different. I mean, the simple arrival of the Doctor is proof enough. But I do wonder if the similarities for both stories are intentional. With the Christmas invasion, we see how the Earth does well with the Doctor's eventual intervention. And with Children of Earth, we see what happens if we're left to our own devices. Wild theories aside, this is a great first Christmas special, a wonderful introduction to David's Doctor. It's funny, it's suspenseful, it's a wild ride. Simply put, this is a wonderful Christmas special, and one that I should really watch more often. Good gravy.
And it is gonna be fantastic.
We now enter the part of the video where I accidentally placed 4 two-parters back to back. This was genuinely by mistake. I didn't even realise until, like, the other day, so, you know. But if anything, it makes a nice little mini section, in this video. So let's crack on with number 7. Number 7.
I've seen them before.
Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. The Doctor, Rose and Mickey accidentally fall into a parallel universe, with technology more advanced than our own, a president instead of a prime minister, and Rose's father is still alive. As they explore this new world, a mad billionaire is desperate to save his own life and bring about the next stage of human evolution. He's created his own army of Cybermen and is ready to convert the people of this world, whether they like it or not. People are probably surprised I'm even mentioning this episode on this list. Even I know that it's not one of the more outstanding episodes of this era. But the thing is, this episode has had a surprising impact, not just on me as a fan, but as a creative as well. For starters, this episode was when I knew I was hooked on Doctor Who. I remember reading the previews in Doctor Who Adventures and being so excited to see these classic monsters realised on screen. I even recorded the episode on VHS, I was so excited. And yes, I still used VHS tapes in 2006. Hell, I still used VHSs up until like 2010. You know, I'm pretty sure I've actually got a, VHS of some of the Sarah Jane Adventures in here somewhere. Lost to time. As I mentioned in the Sarah Jane video, I'm not a fan of featuring a classic monster's name in an episode title if they're meant to have some sort of surprising reveal moment. Though I must admit, as much as I knew they were coming, the build-up and eventual reveal of the Cybermen as they crash Jackie's party is frankly iconic. I love pretty much everything about the Cybermen. I love the voice, I love their look, I love the way they move, the sound they make as they walk gives me frickin' chills, and Murray Gold's theme! I know I've already said it once, but I'll say it again. Everything about my towering silver boys is just iconic, and I love them so much. And it annoys me that they get mistreated from this point onward. Army of Ghosts and Doomsday was looking like it was going to be another awesome cyber story. And as much as I enjoy the reveal and the concept of the Cult of Skaro, they immediately overshadow the Cybermen, both in firepower and story-wise. We go from a Cyberman invasion to, oh hey, the Daleks have a portable prison with them. And sure, it's a whole war and they need an army, but come on, just give me the Cybermen, please. Even in the later solo adventures, like The Next Doctor, Closing Time, and Nightmare in Silver, there's always some other element that almost too easily overpowers the Cybermen, or steals the spotlight from them completely. And don't even get me started on their 12th Doctor appearances. But hey, I'm sure Chris Chibbers will do something with them. It's not like he wrote Cyberwoman or anything. But yeah, relatively recently, I noticed just how much these two stories have actually impacted me as a writer. You've got obvious stuff, like the Cybermen being my favourite Who monster, but then you have travelling to parallel worlds and the idea of crossing them over. For anyone who's followed my channel for a good couple of years, you'll remember Invasion from the Other Dimension, a series literally built around the idea of crossing over parallel worlds into one super narrative. That was actually set to end with a Cyberman invasion. In fact, the idea was that the Cybermen that would appear in the series were actually from an alternative timeline where the Doctor was defeated by the Cybermen and overthrew that version of their Earth. I guess we're satisfying all kinds of people today. Finally got the Doctor Who video out, and finally revealing some story elements from the Invasion series, for all 3 people who cared about it. I feel like I've gushed enough about this story as it is, but I hope that I've been able to explain why I like this episode so much. Not only did it cement my love of Doctor Who, but it also sparked the fires of creativity for me. And believe you me, if I ever get the chance to work on Doctor Who, I'm going to make sure that the Cybermen once again rise to their full potential.
How do we do that?
Oh, I'll think of something.
You're just making this up as you go along.
Yep. But I do it brilliantly.
Number 6.
Who are you?
I am General Stahl of the 10th Sontaran Battle Fleet, known as Stahl the Undefeated.
The Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky. The Doctor and Donna are called back to Earth by Martha to get help with a unit investigation. The potato-headed Sontarans have teamed up with a young genius and plan to suffocate the world in order to create a new breeding planet for their wars. The Doctor must fight to save humanity. But not everything is as it seems. Oh ho ho. While they made minor appearances in previous episodes of The Revival, as well as mentions in both Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures, this was the first real reintroduction to UNIT, an alien investigation group that the Doctor used to work for.
What, you used to work for them?
Yeah, a long time ago, back in the 70s. Wasn't the 80s.
Yet another thing that really rubbed off on me. I just love UNIT, and frankly any story that features them near enough gets a passing grade by me. Sure, it's not the classic UNIT family with the Brig, Mike Yates, and of course the one and only Sergeant Benton, but I think a modern UNIT family would be great. I like Colonel Mace and Captain Price, we get Captain Magumbo and Malcolm later, and of course we now have Kate Stewart, so it's not like we can't have a regular cast that they keep bringing back. Hell, throw Ross in there and we have a nice mix. Oh, never mind. The Sontarans are probably the best redesign of a classic monster, as much as I've gushed about the Cybermen. I actually forgot how competent the Sontarans were before Moffat turned them into a joke. And yes, there is a big difference between this...
We have an intruder!
How did he get in? In through the window?
Doctor, you impugn my honor!
Yeah, I'm really glad you didn't say belittle, because then I'd have a field day.
That is just so cool.
Is the temperature significant?
And this...
Sir, do not discuss my reproductive cycle in front of enemy girls. It's embarrassing. I have gene spliced myself for all nursing duties. I can produce magnificent quantities of lactic fluid.
Have you been eating this jelly sherbet fancies again?
No.
I think this really benefits from being a two-parter as well. We get the steady build-up to the Sontarans' plan through part 1, the enactment of that plan as we head into part 2, and using that whole other episode to feel its effect, as well as resolve it. It's really well paced is what I'm trying to say. I really enjoy the set pieces as well, with the Sontarans taking over the factory, Unit then pushing back, the Doctor and Ross in the Jeep, Donna sneaking through the Sontaran ship. There's a lot of very memorable moments in this. And let's not forget about Wilf! Oh God, Wilf! Oh, I feel sick. And as I mentioned in the Sarah Jane video, it's cool that we get a little continuation of this story in that series. It makes the universe feel that little bit bigger and connected. Speaking of...
Oh, is that it?
Number 5.
Right, now we're in trouble. It's only just beginning.
The Stolen Earth and Journey's End. The Daleks kidnap Earth, along with 20-odd other planets, in order to create a reality-destroying bomb that won't only destroy this universe, but every other universe too. This is the biggest threat the Daleks have ever posed, and frankly haven't risen back to since. Which is really weird when you think about it. The Daleks have been skulking around the universe for the past 10 plus years. Kinda makes you wonder what they've been up to. Bugger, he knows. Anyway, with the Doctor's absence, Earth gets taken over without a second thought, with only a ragtag group of familiar faces ready to band together to save the Earth. Let's not beat around the bush here. These episodes aren't great because of the Daleks. They're great because, after 4 years of Doctor Who, 2 series of Torchwood, and the first season of the Sarah Jane Adventures, all of our favourite characters come together in one glorious story. People say Avengers Infinity War and Endgame is the most ambitious crossover of all time. Doctor Who had to do it on a TV budget 10 years earlier. Funnily enough, Russell T Davies has stated that this story is akin to a child playing with all their toys in their toy box. You don't care if you have Star Wars stormtroopers battling Optimus Prime and the Autobots. It's fun and cool. And that's exactly what this story is. It's fun and cool for everyone who's watched all 3 shows back to back. It pays off for your viewership. And as someone who's had to rewatch all 3 shows to make this series, I really appreciate that. I still weep like a child when the Subspace Network is first established and everyone gets to chatting and, you know, Jack hits on Sarah and they're complimenting each other. It's so good. And we haven't even talked about the return of Davros yet, played by Julian Bleach. Julian has technically made 2 appearances in these top 10 lists already, as the Nightmare Man in the Sarah Jane episode, The Nightmare Man, and as the Ringmaster in Out of the Rain, which was a Torchwood honourable mention. I can see why they kept hiring this guy. He's just outstanding on all 3 roles, and his Davros is wonderful. I just love his line delivery. It looks like he'll be staying in the role if Series 9 is anything to go by, and I hope he does make more appearances as the creator of the Daleks in the future. Oh, of course, how can we forget about Wilf? Oh god, Wilf! Motion sickness. Lovely. I would personally say that Stolen Earth is better than Journey's End, solely for the cliffhanger. Much like Infinity War and Endgame, I find the build-up more satisfying than the execution, but in both cases I do enjoy the whole package. But you just try and tell me you weren't freaking out over that cliffhanger. Both of them, like Infinity War has a great cliffhanger. It's up there in my top 10. Oh god. Oh, actually, no, a top 10 cliffhanger is actually a really cool idea. Huh. You know, I might just do that. Not confirming anything, but I might do that. That's a pretty cool idea. And then I can end it without revealing what my number 1 is. No, yeah, okay. Future me, save that idea. That's a really cool idea. 2008 was the best year to be a Doctor Who fan. You had Series 4 of Doctor Who, of which practically every episode was at least enjoyable. The second series of Torchwood, which actually ended a week before Doctor Who started, as well as Series 2 of the Sarah Jane Adventures, which is probably my personal favourite series of that show. And at the centre of it all was this, the crown jewel, of which I consider to be the unofficial 45th anniversary of Doctor Who.
Excuse me? What day is it?
Saturday.
Saturday. Good. Good, I like Saturdays.
So...
Number 4. Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways. Not quite done with the Daleks yet, are we? Also back in the 9 outfit. For the last time. The Doctor, Rose and Jack awake to find themselves taking part in sadistic versions of classic reality TV and game shows. However, after escaping from their deadly games, the Doctor and Jack are too late to save Rose from being atomized. But it's soon revealed that Rose isn't dead, but is now held captive by a new army of Daleks, mutated from the losers of said games. The Doctor must face his oldest enemies once again. But can he do it without losing those he cares about the most? What an absolutely outstanding final to the first series. I don't even know what else to say apart from that. It's just so good. The TV shows they parody are really cool, though I will admit they have kind of dated themselves now, since The Weakest Link hasn't aired in years, and anyone watching won't get the joke about the android. And that's a crying shame, since it's probably the funniest thing about the story, and having to explain the joke kind of ruins it. After seeing what a single Dalek can do earlier in the series, seeing them back in force is just a sight to behold. Sure, their presence is ruined by the next time trailer for Bad Wolf, but if you're able to make your way into the story without that knowledge, then you've got a pretty awesome reveal waiting for you. I also like how the humans don't even stand a chance against them. To paraphrase a later Dalek story, this isn't a war, it's pest control. They've already won. All the humans can do is try and buy the Doctor more time to make what is basically a suicide vest. One of the biggest achievements, I think, is the Dalek Emperor himself. He looks great, he sounds great, and the animatronic work on the Khaled mutant really brings out his character. Not to mention Nicholas Briggs' just amazing performance. The fact that all these new Daleks are mutated humans and have this cult-like affection towards him is bloody terrifying as well. I'd actually like to see Jodie Whittaker's Doctor take on this guy next. I don't know why. Don't ask me why I think that would be cool. It's just, there's something, I don't know, something about Jodie Whittaker's optimism versus this guy's god complex would be amazing. And of course, how can we not mention Christopher Eccleston's absolutely fantastic performance over these 2 episodes? Ranging from funny, to mournful, to cocky, to rage-filled, to confident, he really pulled out all the stops here. The biggest tragedy is that Chris will probably never return to Doctor Who for any of the crossovers, but considering he didn't have the best time while a part of the show, you can't really blame him. I respect his decision and wouldn't want to force him to do something he doesn't want to do. I'm very thankful he contributed to, as I said earlier, the single best series of Doctor Who. I just wish I had seen it when it aired. Doctor Who wouldn't be as popular or long-lasting as it is today without this first series. And this final was the perfect ending to a perfect Doctor.
Before I go, I just want to tell you, you were fantastic. And you know what? So was I.
Number 3.
Andy, you okay?
The Waters of Mars. The Doctor arrives on our planet's red neighbour, meeting the crew of Bowie Base 1, the first humans to ever travel to the surface of Mars. Technically, I mean, now that we've had, what was it called again? The Empress of Mars? We know that some Victorian people somehow made it to Mars. I actually really like that episode, but let's save that for a different list. According to the history books, the day on which he's arrived is the day the crew, along with the base, is destroyed due to unknown circumstances. The Doctor tries to leave, but is promptly wrapped up in the events. He has to make a choice whether to leave everyone to die, or change one of the most pivotal points in human history. Doctor Who is no stranger to Base Under Siege stories. Frankly, they can be some of the best episodes. The Impossible Planet and Under the Lake spring to mind. But in my opinion, this is the best one. The crew of Bowie Base 1 are likeable chaps, and while we don't get that much time to know them that well, the fact of their impending deaths makes you feel sorry for them regardless. Right from the get-go, we know their deaths are inevitable. It's just a matter of time. The Flood itself is a really cool concept. For the first time in a while, we don't have a distinguished monster per se. What we have instead is a parasite, a rather intelligent parasite, that simply wants to live and thrive in water, making Earth a delectable target and humans a handy vehicle to get there. And I love the designs of these waterlogged zombies, as well as their powers and such. The fact they constantly have water pouring out of their mouths is some really cool imagery as well, very creepy, and the way the infection spreads through just a single drop of water is terrifying as well. As a matter of fact, that's one of my favourite things about them. They're just zombies. Except they don't want to eat your brains. They just want to, make you wet. But above all else, in this one singular episode, we get 4 absolutely cracking scenes back to back. The first being when Adelaide tells the Doctor what made her want to travel to space to begin with. The second being the Doctor trying to explain why he can't save them. The third, him then realising that time is his to command and his attempts to save the remaining crew. And finally, of course, him boastfully returning them to Earth, and Adelaide's suicide. Crewe on the sofa, telling it like it is, still not advertiser friendly, still making no money. The back half of this story is just chock full of powerful moments, and it's wonderful to behold. From the story to the acting, the music, the visuals, I don't know how else to word it, it's just great. But something that will forever stick with me, right from the first moment I saw this episode. this was the story that made me hate the Doctor. Right at the end, when he comes lording out of the TARDIS, another group of humans saved, as if it's nothing, claiming to be the Time Lord victorious, that made me see my favourite Doctor in a completely different light. For ever so briefly, the caring, kind-hearted man who meant so much to me turned into a cold, ego-driven, heartless alien. And the simple fact that this story made me turn against not only my favourite incarnation of the Doctor, but one of my all-time favourite characters, period, I think gives this story reason enough to be on this list.
Water is patient, Adelaide. Water just waits. The whole of the world. Water always wins. Come on.
Number 2.
And where is he now? Over.
We found a body, sir.
Turn left.
The Doctor is dead.
Right. Donna meets a fortune teller who tricks her into revealing a seemingly insignificant moment in her life. Suddenly, the past changes so that Donna doesn't meet the Doctor, leading to our favourite Time Lord meeting a less than fortunate end. What precedes is a retelling of all the modern day stories, including and post The Runaway Bride, with the human race suffering at the hands of all these different alien invasions without the Doctor to stop them. For someone who likes continuity, most of the modern day stories, as well as a good what if, this episode is right up my alley. Removing the Doctor from any kind of story in his universe is a tantalizing idea, and having a whole episode based around it is just great. It really shows how buggered we'd be if the Doctor didn't turn up for these events, and makes you really appreciate what he does. Revisiting these past episodes is really nice, until they turn ugly with a staggering amount of casualties every time something happens. And like I said with the Stolen Earth entry, it's awesome to hear about all the other teams from the spin-offs trying to shoulder the responsibility, but also failing along the way. Gwen and Yanto were probably killed by Sontarans, with Jack being taken captive and likely tortured. And let's not forget that Martha, Sarah Jane, Luke, Clyde and Maria all suffocated on the moon. Doctor Who, on prime time BBC television, suffocated 3 children. Who knows, actually, if there was any other children in that hospital? The BBC let them get away with suffocating children! What? It should also be said, Catherine Tate, Jacqueline King and Bernard Cribbins are a wonderful trio to begin with. But by God do they act their socks off in this episode. You'd be forgiven for simply considering them comedic actors. Which they are, they can be extremely funny when they want to be, but when the situation calls for it, these 3 can be some of the most serious and believable performers this show has ever had. Sylvia's 1,000-yard stare is so powerful and has stuck with me for years. It's legitimately the first thing I think of when it comes to this episode. And of course, we get our precious cinnamon bun Wilf being his usual awesome self.
Well, always loved a sing-song.
We also have the return of Rose, as well as some setup for the series final, as we've already covered. I've always liked Rose, and I'd be lying if I didn't say it was nice to see her back. Like with the Christmas Invasion, this was another story where I was on the edge of my seat, even after all these years, and knowing more or less how it ends. Just a great human episode about people suffering. It's tragic, but you just can't turn away.
We're going out. Oh my God. No. The stars are going out.
But before we reach our top pick, here are a few honourable mentions. Midnight. A controversial episode to my understanding, but I personally find it extremely suspenseful and a great little bottle episode. Also, I really enjoy the acting in this. Planet of the Ood. After their introduction in The Impossible Planet, this episode is a great follow-up story exploring this species even more. And it's gotta be said, Mr. Haplin is one of my favourite one-off villains. Also, great music. Rose. Quite simply, I can't imagine the series coming back in any other way. This is a really good, really fun reintroduction to the world of Doctor Who. Not only for old fans, but for new fans too. I mean, here we are. And my number one favourite episode of the Russell T Davies era is... Voyage of the Damned.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Christmas.
Not the episode I presume you expected, unless you did guess this, in which case, gold star. After rebuilding the TARDIS and bumping into his future father-in-law, the Doctor accidentally collides with a starship recreation of the Titanic, which is passing by Earth around about Christmas time. Stowing away, he makes friends with a space Australian, just as the ship collides with 3 asteroids. Trapped on the lower decks of the ship with a band of misfits, the Doctor must lead them to the bridge in a desperate attempt to save the ship, before it plummets to the Earth. However, is there more to this random disaster than meets the eye? Michael, you're probably saying, you've already used all the words in your vocabulary to summarise and sum up the previous entries in this list. What new descriptive words could you possibly use for this entry? And the answer is I don't. I don't have any new words. I don't have anything too fancy to say about this. Ever since I first saw this episode, I just liked it. Yeah. But by God, am I gonna try. The setting is basic, sure, but inventive. It's got a space 1920s look kind of going on. I dig it. I love the characters they introduce, more on them in a minute. The reveal of Max was a surprise to me, not sure about you guys, but I love how over the top he was. The music is simply iconic, if not better than usual, also introducing my favourite version of the theme while we're at it. And the action set pieces are pretty swish. Swish is a good thing, by the way. I liked Astrid pretty much immediately, probably because she's Kylie Minogue. And I might have had a crush on Kylie Minogue since I was like 6. But bias aside, I'd say she did a cracking job in this episode. There was no way Kylie was going to stick around as a companion as much as I wanted her to, but in those 70 minutes, she rocketed her way up my favourite companions list. And no, I'm not going to make that list. Nuh-uh. No, sir. Because that's a flame war I don't want to start. Oh, but I mean, I'm worried enough what the comment section for this video is going to be like. Boy. Even the side characters are extremely memorable. Morven, Foon, Banakafalata, and of course, Mr. Copper. Good God, Mr. Copper is just so lovely. His backstory is just heartbreaking, and I just want to give him a hug. Of all the characters to survive any story, I really hope Mr. Copper went off and lived his best life. Oh, and of course the first appearance of Wilf! Oh God, Wilf! The hosts are cool. Pretty much all I have to say on them. They're very basic henchmen. Droids. Hench. droids. But the designs are cool. I think if the Weeping Angels hadn't been created so recently and then subsequently became extremely popular, then the host might have been a little more memorable. Everyone's performance is just spectacular. I can't think of anyone who didn't impress me even a little bit. And the final couple of scenes are wonderful and grab me by the heart every time. Look, as I've been editing this, I've actually been questioning myself on whether I should put this at number 1. A lot of the previous entries, I think, go very in depth as to my connection with those episodes and why they stand out to me. Here's why the Cybermen mean so much to me. Here's why Unit means so much to me. Here's me weeping over the connectiveness of this era and all of these shows. I even pride myself on having my top pick being an episode that wouldn't typically be picked. And I know there are better episodes out there. Frankly, the Waters of Mars and Turn Left each have their own reasons for being number 1. And I know and agree with a lot of people that the Family of Blood two-parter is probably the best episode of this era. But at the end of the day, this is just my opinion. I do legitimately think that Voyage of the Damned is the best episode. In my heart of hearts, this was always at the top of my list. There isn't any complex or deeply philosophical reasonings behind it. I've simply always liked this episode. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm probably overthinking this whole thing. I mean, it's me. Hence why I added that ruling of choosing from the heart and not the head. There's nothing wrong with simple enjoyment. I'm sorry if people expected something similar to my Mark of the Berserker explanation. Hell, I low-key wish I could explain this as easily as I did that. But I can't. And that's alright. So, yeah. There we are. Voyage of the Damned is my favourite episode of this era. Simply because I like it. Enough said.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Copper.
And those are my top 10 favourite episodes of the Russell T Davies era, as well as the end of our unintentional trilogy following his time on the show. When I created the Torchwood top 10 list, I never intended to do a follow-up, let alone 2. But thanks to you guys and your overwhelming support, we've finally got here, and for that, I'm extremely grateful. I've been able to express my love for 3 shows that mean a lot to me, and in some cases, I've also convinced you guys to go back and give some episodes another shot. The engagement the previous 2 videos have been overwhelming, quite frankly, and I've loved reading all of your comments. I don't think I'll do another Doctor Who themed top 10 list immediately, at least not until I convince myself to cover Matt Smith's era. Although, considering we've covered the Russell T Davies era in a single video, maybe we should cover the Moffat era in a single video as well. It would certainly be a lot easier. While this is the end of this trilogy of videos, I don't think it's the end of me covering Doctor Who stuff on this channel. I've previously expressed interest in covering single episodes of the show. I just need to find episodes that I have something worth saying. I mean, I know I said I wanted to do K9 and Company, but it's so boring! As I've mentioned, I've got the beginnings of a fun timeline video bouncing around my head. Watch this space if you're interested in that. Another idea I've had is actually sharing some of my ideas for Doctor Who stories. I'm certainly going to try and do one of those for sure. If you like my way of going about things, I'd actually really recommend checking out my pet project, Higurashi the Anime Retrospective, where I go a little too in-depth about an anime series that means as much to me as Doctor Who does. I'll admit that episode 1 is a bit slow, but I definitely find my style come the second episode. As for me, again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has supported and waited and who's watched all 3 of these videos. The Torchwood video, the Sarah Jane video, this one. It genuinely really means a lot. I never imagined these to be half as successful as they have been, and it's been so great seeing like your guys' comments and interacting with you guys and getting your opinions. It's genuinely really heartwarming, and just thank you all so much for giving me some of your time. As always, I've been Michael Crewe from Crewe on the Sofa. You already knew that. And I just realised I didn't have a single episode from Series 3. Shit. It's not even that the episodes are bad, actually. I mean, I really like Smith and Jones is actually a really good introduction to Martha. And the Shakespeare Code, even as someone who doesn't like Shakespeare, it's actually a very, very interesting and very cool witch story. Gridlock, you know, very inventive from a technical standpoint. I like just the fact that all the set, it's just one set, it's the car, and they redress it every scene. It's great. I even like the Daleks take Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. It's a very interesting story. The Cult of Skaro should have been around a lot longer, but very cool. The Lazarus Experiment. Mark Gatiss is amazing in that. Love me some Mark Gatiss. And the scene at the end of the church is absolutely amazing. 42, very interesting idea, very good concept. You know, travelling through the whole ship, and very cool. Very much enjoy that. Of course, Human Nature and Family of Blood is probably my number 11, quite frankly. It was in the original version of this list, but clearly didn't make it that far. Don't like Blink. I actually don't like Blink. I'm not gonna lie. Not a fan of Blink. I think the Weeping Angels are extremely overhyped. But Utopia, bloody Utopia, and Sound of the Drums and Last of the Time Lords, all fantastic. Series 3 is actually very good. I just didn't mention it. Could do without Blink though. I did it! Yay! Oh no.